You're listening to Ask When, the podcast. Folks from all walks of life talk about their daily hustle and bustle, living and celebrating life, sharing tips on becoming champions, especially for those who are muscling mental and physical disabilities. Ask When, the podcast, with your host who has mustered over 30 years living with cerebral palsy and going strong. Author and cerebral palsy advocate Wynn Charles. Ask When, the podcast starts right now.
Welcome to Ask When, everyone. And this afternoon with me I have Hank. And so I'm going to let Hank take it away and explain more about what he does.
Alrighty. Hi, my name's Hank Scott, and I work for a small aerospace company here in Colorado, just around the corner from Wynn, actually. And we've recently unveiled a design of an airline seat that is basically the purpose of the seat is to allow people to fly on airlines in their own wheelchairs. And we do this by... Yes. So the idea of the seat is it's a convertible seat. You press a button, you slide one seat over the top of the other seat, and it reveals a large space and a docking and tie-down system. The aim is that this design will allow airlines to fly manual and powered wheelchairs with occupants in the cab.
Well, for those of you who do not know, one of my favorite things is traveling. The downside of me traveling is transferring out of the wheelchair and transferring and getting on the plane. And lucky for me, I have the use of my legs. I still have the use of my legs after a back operation that went wrong, and I still have the use of my legs. So I don't necessarily need all the assistance from my wheelchair, although the last time I used one was only in March. But I'm thinking more about the people that can't use their legs, and I hate to call them buffoons, but I read a stat once, and it was on Facebook. The airlines have dropped something like 60,000 wheelchairs, both manual and power, and I have been one of those stats. I had my wheelchair drop down a flight of stairs getting on their plane, and I didn't even notice until I got to the other end. They go, here your wheelchair, and the person who was traveling with me, thank God, said something is wrong, and the airlines did nothing about it. So, Hank, what made you guys make this airline seat? Why?
Well, it's an odd story. It's a long story, but we started with so we're just a normal airline seat design company, and we have some very unique designs. And all of our designs have a staggered layout, which means the seat next to you is either slightly higher, slightly lower, and slightly further forward or back. So the person next to you's shoulders and elbows are offset slightly. The reason we have the staggered design is our original concept, which we have designed and gone through all the crash testing, is called the side slip seat. And the purpose of that seat was to give you a wider aisle during passenger loading and unloading. So how it works is the aisle seat would slide sideways over the top of the middle seat and during passenger loading and unloading. So people can move down the aisle a lot faster. One of the advantages of that design was it also allowed people in wheelchairs who can transfer into the airline seat. It allowed them to skip the aisle chair. So they could actually take a full-size wheelchair, as long as it's skinnier than the front door, which is 32 inches. If it's skinnier than 32 inches, you could take the wheelchair all the way down the aisle, There are some variations of aircraft where there's a skinny section at the front, but those monuments, those pieces of plastics and whatever, are easily moved or redesigned. But the idea was to get people on and off the plane faster, so there was a financial incentive for the airlines. But one of the other advantages was that a full-size wheelchair could go down the aisle, and then a person could transfer. And in accordance with the Air Carrier Access Act, have a wheelchair on board. Our hope was, in that case, the wheelchair that stays on board would be the wheelchair that the person owns, as opposed to an airline generic wheelchair stored somewhere in the back galley. So that's how it originally started. Fast forward 6 or 7 years, we found out that the airlines didn't really want to have a sliding seat that was slid by the passengers. Imagine 60 rows of seats being slid in and out for people.
I can't.
So we backed away from it. But then about 9 months ago, an airline came to us, a very large airline came to us and said, "Hey, could you do a business class version of that seat?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And they said, "Well, because your current sliding seat only slides about 12 inches either side. So your typical aisle's 20 inches, and then you get another 24 inches of width. But if you go to the business class section of a domestic aircraft, like a 737, where instead of the front seats are triples, they're doubles." And they said, "Could you do a double, but get it to slide so far that the space left behind could dock a wheelchair?" And we did some math and some measurements, and we figured out we could do it. And so we did. And we built a prototype. It's only literally I hacked it up in my garage, to be honest. We cut up some old seats. We put some other bits together. We made it look pretty for demo. And so now in the front of the aircraft, you could have this really wide space to bring to bring a wheelchair down the aisle, lock it in place using one of these docking systems. The one we've worked with is the Q-Straint docking system, currently used on buses and light rail.
Damn.
And then the seat next to it, and this is the really important thing. There's plenty of these inventions out there, but they all require the airlines to give up revenue by giving up real estate. With our design, you basically slide one seat over the top of the other. You lock it in place, and that seat's still completely usable. The space left behind is where the person in the wheelchair goes, and they will just pay for a normal ticket. So we aren't asking the airlines to give up revenue. That's the key. If they're not giving up revenue, they don't really have a great argument as to why they shouldn't be accommodating people in wheelchairs a little bit better than they are right now.
Yep. You're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the choir. A person who last traveled in March. I'm noticing my Airbuses that fly in and out of the Aspen Airport. They have the skinniest aisles known to man because they're skinny planes. They're not big, huge planes that are flying in and out of the Aspen Airport. And you, this I do know, you have to be certified to even fly up here, and because the mountains, you're flying in to the mountains, and so like, oh, this is great. No, they had you guys will appreciate this one. So we land in Houston, and no, it was coming back. We didn't land. It was coming back from Orlando to Chicago, and the person goes, "Well, let me see how big the aisle is." And I'm sitting there like,
15 inches.
Oh my, this is not cool. And people who know me now, based off my podcast, know that I'm skinny as well. I use a pediatric wheelchair. So I'm skinny. I can't imagine the person who's bigger than I am using the aisle chair. And to hear the airline industry say that, and oh my, I've been
And
like,
one of the
oh my.
interesting things I've heard, I've met with a lot of the accessibility folks at the airlines, and to be quite honest, they really do want to do the thing. I just think that they are competing with other departments at the airline who say we're complying with the law, or we can't afford to do this, and so it's not a lack of wanting to do the right thing. I just don't think that they can win the arguments. And it all comes back to this: how much are we willing to give up to accommodate people? And I think the good news is the Paralyzed Veterans of America recently filed lawsuit with some other groups against the FAA for not complying with the Air Carrier Access Act, which is a subset of the ADA. And Congress, God bless them, actually went one step further and said, okay, not only are we going to start counting how many wheelchairs get damaged, that was the basis of the lawsuit, then we're going to look at bathroom access on the narrow body aircraft where the bathrooms are traditionally very small. Yeah. But they also commissioned a study, and this is an FAA committee who's been set up, and it's being sort of run by the National Science Foundation, and it's already had a meeting, and it's having another one in April. And they are charged with investigating tie-down solutions to secure a wheelchair on a plane, which is pretty cool because now the government may actually come out and say, look, we're doing this, okay? Airlines, you have to comply. And then the airlines, as they do on buses and trains.
You just made my next trip on an airline. So you just made my next trip on an airline so more easy because I am super afraid of my wheelchair getting damaged to the point of I put a luggage strap around it so it doesn't get damaged, and then it doesn't get damaged. So when they lift it, it stays together.
That's the biggest thing we hear is because we're not just ourselves coming up with some idea. We're working with as many stakeholders as we can. So All Wheels Up is an organization out of Dallas that's actually done a crash test on a wheelchair. Michelle Irwin out of All Wheels Up, her son's in a powered chair. And we're dealing with the docking system companies, we're dealing with wheelchair manufacturers, and we're learning a lot as we go. But the biggest thing we hear is, wheelchair damage it's ridiculous. The number, I think it's something like 30 a day reported damaged.
Yes.
That's at one airline.
And United has, because I put on my tickets all the time, and people do this for me now, who booked me tickets, they put must travel with a wheelchair. And United, the last time I booked a ticket was I put must travel with a wheelchair, can't walk, and traveling with my own device. And United shot me an email and said, please fill this out, take a picture of it. And the United, it wasn't working. The picture, the information wasn't working. So I just did the luggage strap thing around my wheelchair. But the damage that airlines are causing wheelchairs is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where and by the way, you guys, I shared this wheelchair seat on my Facebook, and someone shared it who I know, and then I shared it, and then I went a little bit further to get a hold of Hank, and so it's like unbelievable that the airlines haven't done this yet, but I know they're busy, and I know they're trying to comply with the laws right now, and I know they're super busy right now because of what's going on, the big capital C word, aka the deep pneumonia. And so the airline industry right now is suffering, so they're not interested in helping the disabled.
Yeah, I realized that a long time ago because with our original design that was really only to give you the wider aisle, you still had to transfer. We would use in our marketing material, we would say, hey, it improves wheelchair accessibility. And that did not ever ping. It was never a selling point in the marketing side of things, which is pretty sad when you think about it. So, not just the wider aisle during the loading and unloading, but also the parking or docking station, I think is either going to be adopted by an airline that wants to do the right thing, talking to several of them, or it will be a byproduct of this committee saying there's a solution, it costs you any money, so you can't complain, implement it the way they ordered 30 years ago when the ADA said you're going to put them on buses and trains.
And I wish that number one, United would do it. Number two, Spirit would do it. Spirit Airlines, because they're awful. They're awful. I mean, they basically left myself and another able-bodied person who was traveling was basically stranded at Orlando International Airport. United, not so much, but I didn't use the United provided wheelchair this time either. But I wish that these airlines would just listen to you, Hank, and listen to all the other individuals who are trying to make my life a little bit easier.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Spirit because Spirit has done something that would actually it helps us in our case. Spirit is one of these airlines that is economy class front to back. There's no business class. Yes. So this design, the original design, if you look at the website, there's some images of a business class version of what we're doing, and there's some images of an economy class. In the front two rows of Spirit Air right now, they have what they call the big front seat. It's an economy class seat, but it's 2 instead of 3, which allows those seats to be really wide. So if you're someone who wants a bit of extra space, you sit there, but instead of paying hundreds more for a business class seat, it's just a really wide economy class seat. And so they charge about $40 or $50 more, which to me is much better than trying to charge hundreds more. And so we would like to, the first design we do, we're not going to do a business class design first. We want to do the economy class because that opens up a lot more destinations and a lot more airlines. And our argument to the airlines would be, if you convert the first 2 rows from triple seats into double seats using our design, you can, in normal operations, charge a little bit more. Spirit Airlines does, and they've proven that these first 2 rows, people will pay an extra $40 or $50. And when needed for a person in a wheelchair, you just slide one over the top of the other. You still have a functioning seat, and it's at the front, so access is improved. You don't have to go all the way down the plane, but just the front 2 rows. So they've financially proven the economic model for other low-cost airlines. So, we really want this to roll out to every airline on the planet, to be honest, on every continent, and that's the way.
And would this be the same with Frontier Airlines too, which is another?
Absolutely. Yep.
So yeah, this concept would be the same with Frontier Airlines because
their economy all the way.
As I said, Frontier Airlines left and Frontier Airlines left my aide and myself they pushed me up to the top of the jetway, and then they said to my aide, take over, because and my aide is standing there, and granted we pulled him and I flight, don't ask why, and my aide is standing like you guys are supposed to help me with this aisle chair, not do the opposite end. And this was Frontier provided chair, because at that time I wasn't traveling with my own equipment. And so I'm like, okay, airlines, you gotta shape it up, because I like to travel like the rest of them, and airlines and me don't mix. I'm perfectly fine getting on the plane. It's just logistical interesting show getting on and off the plane. I'm perfectly fine on the plane. It's but what Hank is doing is going to make my life a heck of a lot easier, and I hope to see it in these airlines sometime soon. And we're not talking about first class. We're talking about the general public here. We're maybe we are talking about first class eventually, but let's focus on the general public.
Yeah, yeah. It's an odd situation. If we did it for the big airlines that do have first class or business class at the front, you run into that problem of if they want to do the right thing, they're going to lose money. In fact, one of them told us if they sell one single seat in business class as an economy price, they make a loss on that flight. And I went, wow, that sucks for you guys. But like, do you travel? Do you travel on public transportation often?
I do. I do. I need help, but I know the tie downs you're talking about, and what tie downs Hank is talking about, you guys, is if you ever seen they do tie downs in handicapped accessible vans all the time. And so handicapped accessible vans are modified vans. So what the tie down Hank is talking about is the tie downs that they basically use in handicapped accessible vans. You put the person in their chair, you lock it down, you lock the chair down, and then so the chair doesn't move, and so that's how you do it. It's a cranking system. I've watched people do it with clients all the time. So it's a cranking system, and so the tie downs that Hank is talking about is the ones that they use in the handicapped and accessible vans on public transportation. On these public transportation, they also use tie downs.
So we when we were filming, we set up a GoFundMe campaign because we're still a startup. We don't have a lot of money. We have a lot of drive, but not a lot of money. But we set up a GoFundMe campaign, and when we were filming for it, a guy called Kurt Wolf from the Colorado Cross Disability Alliance was kind enough to come and be our model, and he's in a powered chair. We had a chair, it had our airline seat on a platform in a studio, and I had the Q'Straint docking system. Now, I didn't know this, but his wheelchair for his van uses the same docking system. So we're just filming away, and all of a sudden he just drives forward into the docking system and locks. And I'm like, oh, wow, I've actually never seen it before. I knew it existed. I've seen it online, but I've never seen anyone actually dock. And within a matter of seconds, he basically drove around the seat. He drove his wheelchair forward into the docking system. It locked in place. And that's it. He's done. I mean, he was locked, ready to go. I will tell you, my belief will be that there will be the docking system. There may be 2 additional quick release little straps that go down to the aircraft floor tracks. But this activity would be assisted by a trained flight attendant or what they call a line mechanic from the airline. But to confirm that the seat is truly locked in place, there would be some airline involvement in that. But to watch him do it with no training, and me not even knowing that he had the system, it was amazing.
Yeah, and so the age could get involved. I mean, tie down system. Once you learn it, you learn it. So once the airlines learn it, it's pretty much self-explanatory, and I am lucky enough that I can use my own legs. I'm just afraid of my wheelchair getting damaged. That's all I'm afraid of, and that's why I want to see first of all, because so I don't have to deal with the luggage strap around the wheelchair, and so I don't have to transfer into the skinny asylum chair either. And but it's all good. But so where can people support you? Where can people find you? Where can people get a hold of you. Then, do you have any questions for me?
Well, I did want to know, like, how often when you travel, do you ever do it completely alone, or do you always have an assistant with you?
I always have and because I need 24-hour care, and
Sure, sure.
I wish, I, I wish I could do it alone. I wish I could, but I can't. And
Yeah.
so face facts. But if I had, if the wheelchair seats, the airline seats were provided to me, what you guys spoke of today, I could essentially get on a plane myself and meet
hmm
my aide at the other end. I mean, geez, I could
That's the hope.
essentially
Yeah.
get myself on a plane instead of this rigmarole of dealing with the TSA and dealing with I essentially broken the wheelchair, which, as I mentioned earlier, happened. And I was never so surprised when the airlines, and this was right after I lost my mom, and I recently lost my dad too, and I was never so surprised that the airlines never did anything about it. They go, here is your wheelchair, and it got smashed. The handlebars got broken off by these dum-dums. And so, and luckily the aide who was traveling with me had enough experience with my wheelchair slash other wheelchairs to know that something wasn't right. And it's like, goodness, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
these,
It's
it's not
it's
fair.
interesting that. So I spoke to the FAA, the head guy, the FAA, relating to this committee, and he said there's good and bad news from the FAA because they really want to help. And there's some clauses within the federal aviation regulations that allow something that's in the best interest of the community, that allows him to waive some testing. So the good news about both manual and power, they are DOT approved for vans and so any form of public transport. They have to go through more stringent testing than an airline seat. And so the FAA said they may actually waive some of the crash testing requirements. However, the problem is the wheelchair, when it docks, becomes part of the aircraft. And so there's a quality control issue that the FAA must adhere to in order to put something and connect it to the aircraft. So there's good news as far as how quickly we can implement this, but there's less good news as far as the type of wheelchair and how they confirm the wheelchair is safe to fly. Their concern is not so much the crash testing outside of if the wheelchair in a survivable crash damaged other people or blocked an aisle, that's what they have a problem with. So
Yeah,
that's going to be something they're going to have to work on through the various working groups. We're just really providing the space, but we're also obviously dealing with all the other stakeholders because there's no point working by ourselves if we don't know what issues everyone else has. And so, but I think that we could have this certified and ready for flight in 18 months. I really do. And so that's why we set up the crowdfunding application. And if anything, I'd ask your listeners to just share the crowdfunding. I mean,
yes,
the
and
crowdfunding for us.
share the
Yeah,
story, you guys. I'll try and find it again and share the
yeah.
story, you guys.
If you do hashtag flying wheelchairs, it'll pop up. It's a GoFundMe campaign. And two things we're trying to do, obviously, with the GoFundMe campaign. We need to raise. It costs millions of dollars to certify a seat, or design, test, and certify. So we need the money to do that. But we also want to have, even if people can just donate $1, we want numbers. We want to be able to arm the various nonprofits that we're working with. We want to be able to have them go to regulators and go to airlines and say, hey, look how many people responded to this GoFundMe campaign. They put in $1 or $5 or whatever. And give them ammo to say this is important and it's needed. Make some
Yes,
rules, make it happen. That's kind of the
give
second
them
sort of aspect
ammo
of it.
and give them ammo. And you guys, you guys know this. I love love, 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 love to travel. Did it a lot in my life, still doing it. And if you guys for me would do that, give Hank ammo so that this could save my wheelchair and 1,000 other wheelchairs out there, that would be the best blessing in disguise. Because yeah, yeah,
We
me
one
traveling, I'm still gonna do it, but this would just be help.
I think the way my daughter actually pointed something out. She goes, "I've never seen anyone in a wheelchair on a plane." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. um, you've probably seen people who need wheelchairs on a plane, but you haven't seen them in the wheelchair on a plane. We want to make this as a common an experience as seeing someone on a bus or a train or light rail, and that's where it should
Yep.
be." And I think we can make it happen. There's definitely no technical things that we can't overcome. I'll tell you that. We've done enough research and we've been involved with all these stakeholders long enough to know that it technically is absolutely feasible. And if we can do it without the airlines having to surrender revenue, then their arguments disappear as well. And to be quite honest, a lot of them really do want to help. They do. They just need the solution. And
They do,
so,
and
yeah.
they they do, and it's um I didn't realize. See, I want something new. I didn't realize that part of the Americans with Disabilities Act there is a franchise for airlines too. I did
Mhm.
not realize that until today. So as
You
long as
know,
I've been,
one of the airlines we're dealing with is one of the largest airlines on the planet, and if they come to the party, then we won't need the funding anymore. But obviously, it's a bad time for the airline. But as senior vice president, an executive vice president at this airline, his mentality was fantastic. He said, when Siri came out with Apple, a lot of the accessibility community went for it straight away. And by the time the competitors caught up, Apple had already caught on. Apple had the market by then. And his argument was, let's do the same thing. Let's make our very large airline buy this product and let's win over the people who need this to travel. And but I like hearing senior executives say, "Hey, we do have an interest in this." So
now
yeah,
that's my type of language. Now that's my type of language. Can we get all the rest of the airlines to get organized there? Yes, I think we can. And
yep,
yes, I think if we bang the drum loud enough, you guys, yes, this is
yep.
the future of airline travel, and I hope to be a part of it. What I did today is brought you guys along with me to my little party of traveling and how stressful it is. Thank you, as a disabled woman traveling, because I don't know what they're going to do with my wheelchair. I don't know if the now luckily I have resources I could um call, but air if the aisle chair didn't show up, I I would have been up in the creek without a paddle. And so um but if the aisle chair didn't show up, I would have been up the creek without a paddle. But luckily for me, I have use of my legs. I could just carry on. But for the millions of Americans that don't, and internationally too, that don't, if the aisle chair doesn't show up, then they're up in the creek without a paddle. I have a friend that um, used to. She doesn't do it any. Actually, yes, she does because um, Amanda of the Bridging Bionics Foundation travels all the time to show off the exoskeleton, and so and we'll get into that story in a minute. Why the exoskeleton is so cool, but having her and she doesn't have the use of the legs, having her not have an aisle to show up is up she's up to the Greek without a paddle. I actually watched her at one point. I was on the same flight as she was, and of course, what happened? The aisle chair showed up late. She was trying to get to the connecting flight. My girlfriend went back and helped her into the aisle chair because these airlines don't want to help. And so it's so what Hank is trying to do is help all of us, help all of us learn to live with people with disabilities.
There's also some other good news. One of our competitors, who's much bigger, obviously, they do seats, but they also do a lot of the interior panels and the bathrooms and the galleys. Well, they've come up with a way where on a narrow body aircraft, such as 737 or an Airbus 320, your typical domestic airline, a way where they can have two bathrooms, as is required, but they're next to each other. And when required, a partition moves and these two bathrooms join into one very big accessible bathroom, bigger than what you get on the wide body aircraft that are flying internationally. So that in combination with our seat, hopefully allow people to get to the bathroom in flight and use it with some dignity as opposed to some of the not so pleasant bathrooms they have now. So
that's why one not so pleasant bathrooms. That's why one I don't use it. And it's so funny because I saw one of those airline bathrooms Hank is actually talking about on my United flight from Houston to Orlando. And I actually took a picture of it. I still have it, and I meant to post it on my Facebook page. And so thank you, United, for making it a little bit easier to travel. And so I think what Hank is doing is phenomenal. I think what your crew is doing is phenomenal, and I want to help to the best of my abilities. This is just the start of a working relationship between you guys and myself because millions of Americans travel, millions of Americans have a disability, and we need all the help we can get. And so, more power to you for doing this wheelchair handicapped, this accessible airline thing.
Well, hopefully we can, get the support to make it happen.
Hopefully we can.
Said, the GoFundMe campaign. The easiest way to find it is the hashtag flying wheelchairs, and two of the wheelchair flying specific nonprofits that we're working with. One is out of Texas, and they're called All Wheels Up, and the second one is in the UK, and they're called Flying Disabled. And they've been helping us with a lot of the technical knowledge, a lot of the implementation stuff, educating us a little. So we've been working with these groups for a while, All Wheels Up for about 4 years actually, we've got all the pieces there. So I think it's doable. Unfortunately,
and I was going to say maybe offline you can introduce me to these nonprofits so we can do a deep dive on everything that's going on, because now you've got this journalist, me, interested because you're speaking my language. For a while there, people were looking at me like, what? You travel? I said, yeah. Oh, yes, I do. And I'm like, now they are understanding why I travel, how I travel, and this is just going to be the next best thing.
Absolutely.
This is just going to be the next best thing. So you guys, go. I know with what's going on right now, you can't necessarily donate. You're out of a job. I know that. But if you can, please consider donating to this Kickstarter campaign to help me, to help millions of Americans to help me save my wheelchair, to help everyone else. And please just help the humans that are going to help you eventually. And the talk about equal opportunity employment. If a motivational speaker in a wheelchair could easily get on a plane, we would have more motivational speakers in person. Hint, hint. And so, yeah. So, hint, hint. There we go. My hint said. But yeah.
And
but
we're on
think I think
the
that
fundraising
it's
is on,
so cool.
Well, hopefully we can do it. I mean, we're really motivated to do it. But like I said, we're a startup. We're pre-revenue. We have certified one seat, and that's our normal economy class seat. So this will be the next one for us. But that costs us millions of dollars. There's a lot involved.
Yep.
So the crowdfunding website is a GoFundMe website, and it's basically hashtag flying wheelchairs will probably get you there.
Yep. And so I will find if you look up Flying Wheelchairs on Facebook, you will see the article that everyone posted, including me. And so this is awesome. This is awesome for the flying public. Yes. And if this comes true, I get to say I was a part of it, which for me as a disabled journalist is really, really special and really, really cool. So I appreciate you, Hank, taking the time out of your day to come on Ask Win and share your little adventure here with the disabled. And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode of Ask Win. And please, 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 please go look up that Kickstarter campaign and donate or share it. And let's make this world a better place for you guys. Thanks, you guys. Bye.
You just listened to Ask Win, the podcast. To become a guest in the show, visit our website at askwin.weebly.com or call 816-591-3399. Just look for Danielle. Connect with Win on Twitter at WinKellyCharles and like our Facebook page at Butterflies of Wisdom. You can also purchase Win's book through Amazon.com or get a copy of the audiobook through Audible. Ask Win, the podcast.